everybody, I'm Jessica and I'm here today to teach you how to paint a sunflower with a little surprise known as a monarch butterfly. I put a survey out on my social media a while back asking people which of three things they would like to learn from me or learn how to do from me. One was ways to use art as a therapeutic way to relieve stress, and another way was to learn how to paint, and another thing was to learn how to cook something. So the one thing that got the most votes in the survey, or the most choices, or clicks or whatever in the survey, is the sunflower. And so here is the finished sunflower. Okay, all right, there it is. And I have a second little surprise at the end of it that I don't want to show you. I want you to watch the video and see the second little surprise. But anyway, I'm so excited to be here with you. And I hope we can do this again sometime. If you have any ideas about things that you want to see me do, that'd be great. I'm an artist who's been working in the art industry as a teacher for about 15 years, and I can do a lot of different things, and so I'm just looking for suggestions and ideas, things that you would like to see me do. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you decide to share your work that you made at the end of this, and either in the communities tab or on Facebook or Instagram. I'm Yumi and Whimsy on those two platforms. And anyway, let's get started. All right, let's get started with some basic information about supplies that you may need. These are just good to have for any painting, really. Let's start with a round brush. This is what a round brush looks like. It is cylindrical in form and usually has a very thin tip going towards the end there of the bristles. It is really good for making a mark that starts off really wide and then gets very thin at the tip of it. These are 3 different sizes that I just happen to have of round brushes. I don't have different sizes of every type of brush, but these I do for some reason. Now let's talk about a flat brush. Flat brushes are called that because, well, they make a very flat looking brush stroke. And it looks very square to me, so that's a flat brush. This is a bright. A bright is similar to a flat brush because it has kind of a straight flat edge at the top, but the bright is more tapered. It's wide at the bottom and then tapers up and widens out again at the top. This is a filbert, and it is just rounded and contoured along the top. It's kind of similar to a bright, but a little bit different because a bright, it has a flat edge and the filbert has a rounded edge. This is an angled brush. It is good for lots of different things. I really like it when I'm doing square things, straight edge things. These are some detail brushes. They are very good for, well, creating details, small little details in paintings and other things. Let's talk about paint. I have some Liquitex Heavy Body acrylic paint here. I have some Liquitex Basics acrylic paint. That's what I'm going to be using for the entire painting, is acrylic paint. You can use lots of different kinds, but this is Golden Paint, the Artist Collection. This is golden also, but this is the open and slow drying acrylic paint. We don't want that kind, and we'll talk about why in just a few minutes. The first thing I want to do, though, is talk about the difference between student grade paint and heavy body paint, and I'm going to use these two as an example because one's heavy body, student grade. That's this one here, the Liquitex Basics. So the difference between these two is the color, the texture, and the effects you can make with the two of them. So as I'm showing you the difference between the textures of paint here, I want to talk about what's different and why I think that the heavy body paint is better to use. And that is because it is much thicker and easier to dilute. You can get all kinds of different effects with heavy body paint that you can't get with student body paint, and you have to layer it less. Heavy body paint, you can make a thick, very textured look. You can make a very thin watercolor look and build up on it. It just gives you so many more options compared to student grade paint. And I tend to get less frustrated with the heavy body paint. Student grade paint, you have to layer and layer and layer and layer and layer, and whereas the heavy body paint can do it in 1 or 2 layers. So you can see the difference how far the student grade paint goes, and you might think that that's better, but in my opinion it's not. The benefit of buying student grade is that it's cheaper than the heavy body paint. I just want to go over the different brands I have. I have a ton of different brands. And the reason I'm showing you this is because I want you to know it's okay to have a crazy mixture. So here's an Academy acrylic. Here's the Golden, which is probably the top of the line, at least in stores that I can around here. Liquitex Heavy Body, which is the middle of the road cost. The one I've never used before, this Master's Touch Thick Body Acrylic. It's kind of Hobby Lobby's version of heavy body. Here are some craft paints. You can absolutely use these. They're like student grade paints. They're very thin, very watered down, but if that's all you can afford for $1, that is absolutely fine because we're just here to have fun. You're also going to need some sort of palette. I have a glass covered, the edges are covered with tape. You can use a paper plate. You can use a regular plate. I also have some palette paper. You can find this really cheap at a craft store, Walmart. It is palette paper, and it has the coating on it that keeps the paint from absorbing into the paper, and it will not dry out as quickly as it would like on a paper plate or a styrofoam plate. You also might need some paper towels or baby wipes or an old t-shirt. I like to use an old t-shirt for drying off my brush and all that kind of thing. You're also going to need a couple of containers for water. Alright, so let's get started and talk about our paint palette, meaning the palette of colors. I should say not paint palette, our color palette. That's the fancy way that artists talk about it. But these are the colors this is the choice of colors we're using for our artwork, our painting. Alright, so I have several colors here that I have swatched for the background and the leaves, and we're going to talk about each one in just a minute. I just wanted you to see what they looked like on paper. They will look similar on canvas. This is dioxazine purple, phthalo green. We're going to use that 2 times. We also have the burnt sienna and the cadmium yellow. And here is the color palette we are going to use for our sunflower. We have cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, cadmium orange, raw sienna, burnt umber, and alizarin crimson. Yes, alizarin. Alright, so like I said, you're going to need 2 containers for water. I just happen to have jars. One is for the first wash, and the second one is for a second wash, just to make sure our brush is nice and clean. That's important when you're using dark colors. So let's get some paint out on our palette. I'm just going to use dioxazine purple, phthalo green blue shade, earlier I mentioned this slow drying stuff that I have. This is the only type of phthalo green I have. Do not get slow drying. It takes forever to dry, which is why it's called slow drying. I am also putting some white out on my palette, and I'm going to start with my flat brush, and I'm going to get some dioxazine purple and some phthalo green on my brush, and I'm just going to get a little bit of water on my brush because, again, this is heavy body paint, and it'll help spread that paint better and quicker. So now I'm just going to go over to my canvas with my brush, and I'm just going to make these short alternating brush strokes. You can make smooth strokes going in a horizontal fashion or vertical or diagonal. I just happen to not like that look in my background. So we're just going to put this, I'm just doing these short little brush strokes back and forth in kind of a random way. No rhyme or reason really here. In a moment you're going to see that I switch brushes because I do not like the way this flat brush is. It's not holding enough paint for me. And in a minute I get frustrated and change brushes. And I bring that up because if you find yourself getting upset and agitated by your brush, just because somebody says you should use that one doesn't mean that it's the right one for you. If you don't like it, wash it out, put it down, and try another one. So I've switched well, not yet. You'll see in a minute. There it is on my palette. And in my editing, you can see where there's a little bit of the other brush after I've said I've changed it. But anyway, here I am with a different brush, my Bright, and I'm just finishing up this canvas. This absorbing ground is what we call it. Okay, now let's finish up these edges around the rim of the canvas because we don't want to have unfinished edges. I mean, I guess you could. It just doesn't look nice, or at least in my opinion, I don't think it looks nice. So I'm using the same colors to paint around the edge or rim of my canvas here. Okay, so to give a little highlight to our shadowy area in the background here, I'm going to grab a little bit of white onto my brush and mix it into our mixture of the phthalo and green and the dioxazine purple. And I'm just going to make just some random brush strokes that give a little highlighted feature to our background here. Okay, and now I'm going to grab just some straight up, without washing my brush, I'm just going to grab some straight up phthalo green and dioxazine purple again, because I want to make a little shadowy area around the edge of my canvas to make a gradient looking like it's going from dark to light towards the middle of the canvas here. So there is our finished canvas pretty much. Just still adding some of the color around the edge. Okay, so we're going to let this dry for about 10 minutes and then we'll be back. Alright, we're back to do the leaves. And I've cleaned my my palette. I'm getting my Bright brush out. I'm using this new color palette of burnt sienna, phthalo green, and cadmium yellow. I'm going to put them out onto my palette here. And don't put them too close together, because you want to be able to mix and load your brush pretty easily without getting them all jumbled together. I also cleaned out my water because we were using very dark colors before, and now we're going to be using some lighter colors, and we don't need all that blue and green all mixed up, messing up our leaf game. So let's just wash our cups or jars or whatever. Our water containers should be washed out at this time, please. So I'm going to pop a little white into the middle of my palette here, and then we're going to get started on some leaves. The leaves just are kind of cool because it makes it kind of out of focused texture or out of focus element to this, and it also draws attention to our focal point, which will be the sunflower. Grab a little bit of burnt sienna on the edge of your brush, and remember you're accessing the paint from the edge of the blob. The paint blob, access the paint from the edge of the blob, grabbing a little yellow from the edge of the yellow blob, and I'm just loading my brush up. See how I didn't mix it around. It's all loaded and mixed on the brush. I decided I needed a little more color apparently, so here I go, doing a little more here on my brush, loading it up. And now I'm just going to make, again, in no real patterned or specific way, just making some marks to create the shadow of the leaves. Okay, so just finishing this up, you can see that I have a nice kind of pattern going, or not pattern, but thing going there with leaving the middle open. I'm getting more yellow. I'm putting more cad yellow in this green. I haven't washed my brush off. I'm just adding a lot more yellow to it to create the highlights for these leaves. And in a minute, I'm going to add some white. But this is going to create the highlights for the leaves in our background. Now I'm getting a little bit of white on my brush, and I'm just going to continue to make these beautiful highlights on top of our leaf shadows here, and that just kind of gives it a little pop, a little highlight, a little something something. Don't stress yourself out too much about this background, because it's gonna be mostly covered by a huge beautiful sunflower, but we don't want to just have a solid color back there, so that's where the leaves come in. Okay, these are looking pretty good. I'm pretty proud of those. Just going to make a few more little strokes here, and then we're going to get started on our sunflower. Okay, so now you're going to need something round to trace to create the center of your sunflower. I have this cup, which is about 3.5 inches in diameter. You can use whatever size you want. Just understand that this will decide how big or how small your sunflower is. So I've traced the rim of that cup onto my canvas with a pencil, and now I'm going to take my bright brush and I'm going to use white to paint it in. Yes, I said white. And the reason we're doing that is because I don't want the layers of that darker color in the background showing through the layers of my sunflower, because I want my big beautiful yellow sunflower to be the cheeriest, most awesome thing on my canvas. So I am going to paint the center white and the petals white so that it creates a base layer for the color to pop. So now we're going to add the petals to this, and to do that you're going to use your bright brush in a very specific way. So I'm putting it up to the edge of the circle, I'm flattening it out, and I'm brushing out towards the edge. And I'm going to do 4. Flattening it, brushing it out, flattening it, brushing it out, flattening it, brushing it out. And I do that 4 more times in between those. And then I have just those other areas to fill in. So for the entire thing, I'm pressing flat at the base of the bristles, and then I'm just pulling it out towards the edge of the canvas to create the beautiful stroke for the petal. And you can you can put as many petals as you want, but I just like to start it by going north, south, east, west, so that I kind of have them spaced out in a consistent way. Okay, so that was the first layer of white, and you guessed it, we're going to do a second layer of white. I let that first layer dry for about 10 minutes. Acrylic paint dries very quickly, especially if you put it under a fan. I happen to have a small little fan that I have a directional situation so that it points at the canvas and dries it faster. But about 10 or 15 minutes is really all you need. You can rest your hand for a little bit, go grab a beer, a glass of wine, a juice box, whatever you're into, and come back when it's dry. Alright, so we're going to get all set up here for the actual color part of our sunflower. I've got my paint palette here and my color palette ready. This is cadmium yellow, that's cadmium orange, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, raw sienna, burnt umber, and white and black in the center. And I've spaced them out in a way that things won't get muddled up and crazy, at least I hope not. And that is our color palette for our lovely sunflower. We're going to start this off by getting some burnt sienna and black on our brush. I'm loading my bright paintbrush with some burnt sienna and some black. You want it to be more burnt sienna than black, really. This is going to be for the center of our sunflower. So I'm just loading up my brush real good with that. And see, there it is. Looking good, looking good. And now I'm going to just fill in the circle of my sunflower with that color. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit more black on my brush, and you'll see in a minute that I get a little bit too much black and I make a mistake, but I'm going to just go back and forth with using the burnt sienna and the black and kind of get a nice mix of those going, and I want it to have a gradient of going from black out to like a lighter brown, but not a super light brown either, because as I'm doing this, actually I'm looking at a photograph of a sunflower, so I'm trying to kind of match what I see there. But to be honest, especially when you're having fun, it's the artwork's really just an interpretation of what the artist sees. It's never going to be photorealistic unless you're specifically following that technique, which is that's a whole class that you would have to take on photorealism. We can't do that in just a fun sunflower painting. So just loosen up, and if you make a mistake, it's okay. I make them all the time, and just keep going and making it look like what you feel like you want it to look like. Okay, so I'm finishing up the center here, but I want to take this moment to talk about how, I don't know if you've noticed, but my video up until this point has a red tone on it. And it's been driving me crazy the entire time I've been filming this, and I haven't been able to figure out how to get it off. But in a minute you'll see it switch to a more normal looking color. So the brown right now looks really red, when burnt sienna is kind of a reddish toned color, but it looks abnormal here. So I just want you to know that before it changes and you're wondering what the world happened, did she use a different color? I didn't. It's the exact same painting. It just looks different now because I figured out how to filter the red tone out of it in the settings. Okay, let's talk about our next step. We're going to take some white and some burnt umber, and we're going to make this very nice kind of light brownish color here. And this is going to provide the first layer of highlight for the seeds, or the highlight of the seeds in the center here. So I'm just taking a dry brush with that color on it, and I'm tapping it, or stippling, that's a fancy word for it, stippling my dry brush with that color all around. And then I'm taking just some straight up white, and I'm gonna add that to it and stipple it around some more with a dry brush. Now when I say a dry brush, obviously it's wet with paint, but I'm not adding water to it. I'm just trying to keep it as dry as possible. So I'm just stippling some straight up white after I do, not too much white, just a little bit, after I do the light brown, and that's supposed to be the highlight of the seeds. So there's our center, and I hope you can see the difference without the red tone now. Isn't it better? Alright, so now for the exciting part. I'm again going to get my bright brush. I guess this is just my favorite brush. But I'm getting my bright brush, and I'm getting just straight yellow ochre paint onto my brush. I'm loading my brush with the yellow ochre, and I'm going to do the same exact stroke that I did when I was creating the petals with the white. I'm flattening it and brushing it up, and then when I get towards the tip of it, I am taking my brush and I'm turning it on its edge or vertical, and just kind of creating a more tapered look to those petals. So I'm just going to do this all the way around on all my petals, and then we're going to come back in with another color to layer up some shadows and highlights. Alright, so I lost some footage. I used two cameras to film this, one for the canvas and one for my paint palette, and I lost some footage of doing the colors. So when I'm showing you how to do the next section of the sunflower, you're not going to see my palette, and I'm very sorry for that, but I'm having some technical difficulties with these cameras today. Anyway, we are about to get started on the next step. We're going to take some alizarin crimson, and we're going to start at the edge of the circle, the inside edge of the circle there, and we are brushing that alizarin crimson towards the tip of our petal. And my pressure on my paintbrush is getting lighter as I get towards the tip of the petal. So I'm starting at the base of the petal and brushing it up, but I'm using less pressure with my paintbrush as I go. All right, so now I'm getting just some straight up cadmium orange and with a little bit of cad yellow, and I'm brushing it over that entire area that I just did. It's not a whole lot of paint. I have some water, a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm brushing that over the alizarin just to tone it down a bit and give it another layer of paint, because like I said, this is all about layering, creating that illusion of depth here. Okay, so now I'm taking some just cadmium orange. Oh no, I'm sorry, that is burnt sienna, and I am brushing that just from the base up, just a tiny little stroke up towards the middle of the petal, not all the way up, just a little bit. And now the next thing I'm doing, I think, I'm so mad that I lost that footage. I'm getting straight cadmium yellow, and I'm just going to brush that from the middle of the petal to the outer part of the petal. So from the middle of the petal to the tip of the petal. That's just straight cadmium yellow. Alright, so I don't like how bright that alizarin red has made that center there, so I want to tone it down a bit more. So I'm going to wash my brush out, and I'm just getting straight up cad orange, and I'm just kind of using that as a way to blend this alizarin up into that yellow I just laid down with some orange over it, just to tone it down a bit. See how that creates a nice kind of depth and shadow there. Alright, so now I'm going to switch to my filbert brush, and I'm going to get some white and some cadmium yellow, and I'm just going to brush some small little highlights on every single petal, going all the way around, just to give a little pop of a highlight on each petal to brighten it up. Okay, so here I am starting off with this monarch butterfly. Unfortunately, I lost some footage again, so you didn't get to see me paint this first side of the butterfly, but I am looking at a monarch butterfly as I do this, and I chose this view of a butterfly because it's the easiest to draw. So I'm just using burnt sienna to paint this outline of a monarch butterfly onto the sunflower. Alright, once that step is done, you're going to paint it white and let it dry, and then you're going to paint it orange. I just use straight up cad orange and with a little bit of yellow, and this is the same concept as for the butterfly. We want the orange to really pop, so you got to put the white down first. So now here we go with our orange inside each of those wings here for the butterfly, and I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to cheat. I'm going to be a cheater, and I'm using black paint markers. These are Posca paint pens. If you don't have them, doing it with a brush will work just fine. And I'm just going over the center of the butterfly here. I think they call that the thorax. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like I need to pick up a science book or something. Anyway, I'm outlining the butterfly here. And again, I lost some footage. I don't know why that keeps happening, but now I've drawn some of the details, and I'm just filling it in black. I'm going to worry about going in with some white dots later, but I am leaving, I'm leaving some spots orange. There that is, with some white dots and some detail. And here, I also went back over the orange again in the little area with the detail, so that I could just clean up the edges a little bit. I went in with some orange and then again with the black just to clean up the edges around it. There is the completed butterfly. The footage keeps getting messed up. But here is the completed one, and here's the little surprise I was talking about. I did the second one while we were filming, and I didn't tell you because I wanted you to understand and see that if you don't have the same colors as me, it is okay. Just do it and have a good time using whatever colors you can. If your sunflower is blue, make it blue. Just have a good time. I've had a great time being here with you and doing this. I hope you guys had fun. Please leave me comments in the community tab. Share your artwork in the community tab. Share it on my Facebook or my Instagram at Yumi and Whimsy. If you have any ideas about things that you would like to see in the future, any content for the future, please let me know there as well. I hope you guys have a great and positive week, and I will see you later. Bye, everybody.